Today on Garage 3030, we're going to change out the rear wheel bearing on an '08 Corvette. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to work on my '08 Chevy Corvette. This car is a really super low mile car, and it's got just a tiny shake in the rear. I've had this happen to me in the past and changed the wheel bearing out, and it worked perfectly fine. Sometimes these cars sit for quite a while, and I think it may either flat spot a bearing or just from not being used. And they're fairly easy to change out. It's nothing that most people can't handle in their garage. So we're going to get on this today, and stick around to the end of the video, and we're going to go over some reasons why I've been off the channel for just a little while, and I'm back and ready to go, and the plans we have for the channel in the future. So stick around for that. So let's just get started on this this project and let you know what it takes to actually change this bearing out. Okay, a lot of you know my '08. So this car is a 3LT 08. I purchased this car about a year and a half ago, and we have put some miles on it. When I bought this car, it had 3,900 original miles, so it set quite a bit. It set in a man's garage, and he drove it very little. But since then, we've put over 10,000 miles on the car in a year and a half, and we've enjoyed it just like I kind of told everybody we were going to. It's been a pretty great car to cruise in. You know, I have a 13, and it's more sporty than this one is, but this one here is just a nice all-around cruiser. The only problem with the all-around cruisers is that it rides so smooth that any little thing I feel in it, it's more noticeable. The car is just, you know, I felt this little bitty tiny, it's not even a shake. It's almost like a murmur. And I've had this happen on my '02, and it was the exact same thing. And I swapped out a wheel bearing, and it worked out perfectly. So we're going to swap the wheel bearings out on this. They're fairly cheap. The wheel bearings for these are, I mean, you can get them for under $100 a piece. It doesn't take long to change them out. It's good insurance if you do hear any kind of problems or noises with it. So we'll get into this. We'll talk more about the car. We'll talk more about what we're going to do, and kind of walk you through this step by step. So let's get started on that. Okay, one of the first things we're going to do is get this car jacked up and put in the air. Most people know how to do that, but if you're new to the Corvette world, there are actually jacking points on the four corners of the car. And I use these pucks. I'll show you here. They're just a hard rubber puck. They actually slide up into the hole and turn, and they'll stay there. And then it gives you a nice jacking point for the jack to go on so you can lift it up. So we're going to put these underneath here real quick and see where, kind of get you adjusted here. So right up underneath the car here. So it's right in here. There's a little hole, and you just slide that in there. And once you do that, you are good to go. So let me get the jack up underneath here, and we'll get this car put up in the air. The frames on these cars are really stiff. A lot of times you'll jack up one spot on it, and both tires will actually come up off the ground. I like to go up fairly high, and then I like to support it from the rear, just to make sure. All right. So now we're going to work on getting the wheel off. This is a 19 millimeter. All right, get some light on here. I want to show you this here real quick. Just purchased this. This is another Ryobi product. I've had fairly good luck with Ryobi stuff. There's certain things that they're maybe not completely up to snuff, but if you're into your own mechanics, don't really use your tools every day. These seem to hold up pretty well. They are an 18 volt. I'll leave a link in the description, but the cool thing about it is it's a light this way, but then it doubles this way, and it actually has hooks that you can hook like underneath the hood of your car and stuff. So it's fairly bright. So we'll give it a shot so you guys can see everything here. Here is our disc brake assembly. We'll have to take that off. Once we get it off, we will, there is a rear support back here that we'll have to take off. It's kind of like a tie rod end. We'll take it off, and then at that point, we can, I'll probably just remove the top A-arm, pull it back, and pull the axle out. Once I get the axle pulled out, then we can remove the wheel bearing. So let's get started on that. The caliper, you're going to have two bolts, one on the top and one on the bottom. It will take for this bolt here, it's going to take a 15 millimeter. And on this one, you have to hold it because this is a sliding mechanism that slides in and out of the caliper bracket. And on this one, you're going to need 18 millimeter to just kind of hold it while you back these bolts out. So we'll get these off, get the caliper off of it, and keep moving forward. Okay, once you get those done, it's simply pretty easy to just remove the caliper. I'll set it up here on this air duct. I don't want it to drag. The next step was you're going to have two big caliper bracket bolts. So what I generally like to do, if I got hardware, I'll screw them back in, at least get them started so I don't lose them. It never fails. Every time I go to do something and I go put it back together, I end up missing bolts. So let me take that off for you. All right, this is a 20 millimeter bolt. This car has never been apart. This is the first time anybody's wrenched on this thing. So it's definitely still there from the factory. Still has the factory Loctite on it. So you got one upper and one lower, just like you had on the bracket itself. And that's going to leave a mark. Like I said, this car has been, with no miles on it, it's been an awesome car. As you can see, the brake pads almost look brand new on this. Rightly so, it only has 13,000 miles on it. So once we get that off, like I said, I will run my bolts back into my housing here. Next thing we're going to do is get these clips off right here, so we can get clips on here on the rotor itself from the factory. They've never been taken off, so let's get us a punch and get that off. Sometimes you can just unthread them, which is what I'm going to try to do, so I can at least keep them intact to put them back on. Okay. With that, you can take off the caliper. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the I call it a tie rod. It's not really a tie rod. I guess it's a tie rod end that's a locator. And that's what controls this movement when they do the alignment. Sometimes these things spin when you take them off. Hopefully we'll get lucky. Looks like we did. We can take that off. And then, like most tie rods, if you take it and you hit it on the flat spot here, it will remove itself. Just like that. Okay, with that, you can see there's movement side to side. The next thing I'm going to do is pop off the sensors. There is a clip on the bottom side here. And then there is an emergency brake cable. It is a hot one today. It is very, very warm out. All right, let me show you what I did here. Here's your brake, and there's a hook right here. All you have to do is pull it down, clip it, and it comes right off. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to take off this axle nut. I'll free the axle up, and the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to place a jack underneath the lower control arm, raise it up, and then what I'll do is I'll remove this upper control arm. It is the same as the tie rod end. So, once you get that done, just take your axle itself, and it's a little tight with these brake cables on here, but you can finagle it out of here. And that's your CV shaft here. This is what drives it from the transmission to the actual axle. So next, we are going to remove this bearing. So to remove this bearing, you're going to have 3, and I may have to remove the bottom one for this, just simply because of how it is the brake cable here. There is a bolt right here that you can't really, sometimes you can sneak an Allen in there, but a lot of times either you'll have to remove the nut and hopefully get to it, or actually remove the lower control arm. So we'll get these out here. So there should be 3 of them, one there, and one there. That is a 21 millimeter. Oh. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to see how hard this is going to be to come off. It may not be that big of a deal, but we'll give it a shot. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we'll take this over on the bench and take it apart. Okay, we are going to start taking this apart. So we have the 3 star bits here, so we're just going to pop them out. And there is the hub. Feels like it's a little dry. Not terrible. But we'll break out our new one. So, I got a new wheel bearing here. I got this off Amazon. I've used them before. They're actually a fairly decent wheel bearing. I'll put a link in the description. I'll also put a link for the light that we talked about earlier. As you can see, it's identical to this one. So what we're going to do is run our... I'm going to orient this so that the wheel speed sensor is on the right side. Just like this, so this can clip back in when we're finished. So at this point, it's just a matter of running the bolts back in. I will put just a little bit of Loctite on them, since they did have it from the factory. Get them started, just make sure they don't cross thread. We'll run them on. And then we'll put our clip back on here for our speed sensor. And it is ready to go back on the car. So let's get that put back on. All right, from this point, it's just kind of putting it back together just as we took it apart. So we are going to put the nut back on the lower. Run that nut down, and what we're going to do is work our axle back in here. like so. We are going to put our axle nut back on. Okay, got the axle nut back on. We'll get our nut on our upper tie rod, or pardon me, upper control arm. So, in this case, it is spinning. Like I said, this is tapered, but you can use an Allen key, and this has a spot. Let's see if I can get this. You can see it. There is a spot for an Allen key, so you can put an Allen key right in that hole. That will keep it from spinning, and then just run it down with the open-end wrench. Because with it being a tapered bit, it as it pulls down, it gets tighter. So now we're going to go back and put, it might be easier while I'm in here to go ahead and do the parking brake cable. Okay. A little wrangling, but we got it done. I'm going to click the speed sensor back in. And then put my my tie rod end back in. This is set up the exact same way as the other one. You can, if it starts to spin, a lot of times you can just lift up on it. Sometimes I've taken a jack and set up underneath it just to put enough pressure on. I'll show you that. A little pressure on the, instead of having to put a little bit of pressure. I don't do a lot. I don't want to hurt it or break it, but you see how I lifted up there. So with that, it pushes it into the taper more, which allows it to go down without having to use that. All right. Now we are going to put the rotor back on. Get that set. So put our upper bolt in. I did put Loctite on this just because the factory had it. I will say that I by no means am a professional mechanic. I'm showing you the way I do it. I've had quite a few years of experience with all sorts of Corvettes. I've had about every model there is and have rebuilt them from the ground up and learned a lot of tips and tricks. And long before there was YouTube, you would learn from trial and error. You'd take it apart. I can remember with the C3 Corvettes trying to figure out how to get the trailing arms out of them and the bushings that freeze up and how to do the press fit bearings in it, and just a little bit of everything. So it's a lot of trial and error. Now it's pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of times you can go watch a video like this, and I know some people are gonna beat me up because, well, you don't have a torque wrench on it. Well, there's certain things that I do. If I'm doing engines and putting those together, yeah, I'm gonna rely on my torque wrench. And but when it comes to things like this, I've never had a failure. Not saying you won't, not saying not to, I'm just saying I don't. So once again, we got the caliper bolts going on, and they go on the same way they came off. And you will have to kind of move them around a little bit just to make sure they fit right into that slider. Now, if I was doing a total brake job on this, I would pull those sliders out, I'd grease them. I mean, you can do it, especially if your car has some miles on it. I would recommend it, because the freer these calipers can move side to side, back and forth, you know, that affects your braking. It affects quite a few things. So it won't get your caliper hung and stuck, and it's just a lot easier to do it now instead of if you're apart, even though you're not doing a brake job. So let's get this going. Hopefully this will spin it back in. You're basically just holding that inside nut here, just till it takes. I don't go crazy with it, but I make sure it's tight, make sure it has Loctite on it. Now I will give it a little insurance. And put your wheel back on. And that is it. Boy, that took it out of me, but at least it's finished. So we will put the wheel and tire back on it, and from that point we will take it for a ride and make sure it works well. And I mentioned earlier that I kind of want to do just a really quick recap on what's been going on the last few months. So the last time I filmed was in June. I had some health issues that came up. Everything's fine now. It took quite a few months to get that taken care of. I haven't had the time really at this point going through all that, trying to work on the veteran, but that is coming up. We've done some pretty cool things so far. I was able to have a few days where I felt better, and I came out and just did some stuff. So we're gonna recap that project and get moving on it. We've got a ton of parts that came in for the veteran. Also, we've got another project in the works that we should be picking up first of the month and getting in here. It's completely different than what I normally work on, but we're going to do a will it run and just see. I'll kind of fill you in as we get to that point. But everything's better on the health front. A few people have reached out and asked where the videos were. I really didn't go into a lot of detail, but I do appreciate all the views that we've had. So please comment, like, subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Hopefully we'll be able to work some some really cool content in here coming up. But we do appreciate you. We appreciate the time you do take to watch Garage 3030. And if you have any suggestions, I take it. You know, as long as they're not nasty suggestions, I won't respond to it. But if they're good suggestions, I respond to almost all the decent comments that I get. So go ahead and put those comments in there if you like something, if you don't like something, if you want to see something different, if there's something I may have missed, because on some of my previous videos on the radio installs and that kind of thing, there was a few things that I took for granted, and I'm going to try to be more in depth, kind of like on this video, to make sure that you have the information you need to do the project yourself. Some of the other stuff, like the Veteran, you know, we're going to put that thing together. It's going to be a cool rod, and we're going to be able to do some paint work on it, some pinstriping work on it, a lot of sheet metal work. That's all coming up here soon. So just a normal guy in a shop, just enjoying the sport. So if you got a project, get out in the shop and work on it. It makes you feel better. Trust me. I know it from experience. So get out there and work on your project. Until next time, we appreciate you stopping in Garage 3030. We'll talk to you soon.